Across America's forgotten landscapes lie stories that were never meant to disappear. Stories carved into cliff faces, whispered through abandoned canyons, and buried beneath ancient ruins where silence feels almost alive. Over the last few journeys, we've walked through dark forests, wandered into hidden cliff dwellings, traced the footprints of lost civilizations, and stood before structures so old they defy explanation. Each place, Walnut Canyon, the shadowed Pueblos, the desert fortresses, the moonlit ruins, left behind traces of lives lived on the edge of mystery. Tonight, we return to that world. A world where families slept in cliff alcoves above deep valleys, where stone rooms still hold the soot of ancient fires, where echoes from centuries ago linger in the cold night air, and where every shadow hints at something forgotten, waiting just beneath the surface. So settle in, slow your breathing, and let the stories of the past rise around you once more. Stories of survival, silence, wonder, and secrets carved into the bones of ancient America. Wupatki and Wukoki Pueblo. Across the sun-scorched plateau between the Painted Desert and the San Francisco peaks lie the remnants of a once thriving desert community that managed to build an unlikely empire in a land of wind and stone. Here, red-hued fortresses rise abruptly from the open plains, their warm tones mirroring the dusty earth as though they emerged from it naturally. These are the Wupatki and Wukoki Pueblos, the crown jewels of Wupatki National Monument in Arizona. Structures that stand in dramatic contrast to the vast grasslands and distant volcanic cones around them. At their height in the 11th to early 12th centuries CE, Wupatki and its satellite settlements were among the largest and most dynamic communities in the entire Four Corners region. In a harsh landscape that often seems empty, this place became a cultural crossroads. The heart of it all was Wupatki Pueblo, tall house in Hopi. Even today, the walk toward it feels like an approach to a desert citadel. Built atop a small rise of Moenkopi sandstone, the builders used the rock itself as both foundation and wall. Parts of the structure once stood 3 stories high, forming over 100 rooms arranged around a wide central plaza. Its masonry is exquisite. Thin slabs of deep red sandstone laid in tight horizontal rows, punctuated by occasional long binding stones that create a rhythmic banded effect. The architecture seems to rise directly out of the mesa, blending with its colors yet asserting its presence. In the plaza, 2 remarkable features reveal Wupatki's importance: a circular ball court and a natural geological blowhole. The ball court, an oval depression ringed by a low sandstone wall, is the northernmost ball court ever discovered in North America. Its form resembles the ball courts of the Hohokam far to the south in present-day Phoenix, suggesting far-reaching cultural exchange. One can imagine ceremonial games played here, spectators gathered around the walls, tying Wupatki spiritually and socially to the broader Mesoamerican world. Nearby, the blowhole is a curious natural vent in an underground fissure system that breathes. Depending on atmospheric pressure, it either inhales or exhales. Stand above it on a scorching day, and a burst of cool air rushes upward, ancient air conditioning. To the people of Wupatki, this phenomenon almost certainly held spiritual meaning, perhaps seen as the breath of a wind spirit or a portal between worlds. Wupatki's population surged after the eruption of Sunset Crater in 1085 CE. Paradoxically, the ash that covered the region created a moisture-retaining mulch that improved farming. The area became a magnet for migrants: Sinagua from the south, Kayenta ancestral Puebloans from the north, Kohonina from the west. By around 1180 CE, Wupatki Pueblo housed roughly 85 to 100 people, with perhaps 2,000 more living in surrounding hamlets within a day's walk, a significant population for such an arid environment. These communities engineered the land with skill, building terraces and check dams to trap runoff, growing corn in pockets of sediment, and relying on trade when agriculture faltered. Wupatki's existence as a standalone pueblo in open terrain, not sheltered in a canyon or carved into cliffs, speaks to both confidence and cooperation. It became a regional hub of commerce and ceremony. Artifacts found here include Pacific shell, turquoise from far-flung mines, macaw bones from Mesoamerica, and items suggesting contact with the Great Plains. The architecture itself blends multiple influences: the Hohokam-style ball court, northern Puebloan multi-story towers, and local Sinagua masonry traditions. Just a short distance away stands Wukoki Pueblo, smaller but visually striking, one of the most photographed ruins in the region. Wukoki, big house, possibly in Hopi, is essentially a three-story tower perched atop a massive sandstone outcrop. It looks almost like an ancient skyscraper raised onto a natural pedestal. Its narrow windows and doorways cut thin slits that frame panoramic views across endless plains, likely housing 2 or 3 families, or perhaps serving as a watchtower or ceremonial structure. Wukoki seems purpose-built for visibility. Standing on its upper level, one could scan the horizon for miles in every direction, from the painted desert to the sacred snow-capped summit of Humphreys Peak. The precision of its red sandstone walls, some still rising to their original height, showcases remarkable craftsmanship. Together, Wupatki and Wukoki create the impression of a desert kingdom, an impression so strong that early Spanish explorers may have heard hints of these red house fortresses in local stories. Yet life here was never easy. The ash that once enriched the soil eventually blew away. Drought cycles returned. By the mid-12th century, just as upheaval spread across the wider Pueblo world, the Wupatki region began to empty. A prolonged drought in the 1270s may have delivered the final blow. The residents likely followed the broader migrations toward the Rio Grande or Hopi mesas where water was more reliable. Hopi oral traditions describe the Hisatsinim, ancestral people, leaving places like Wupatki and joining the Hopi clans. The land, however, remembered them. The red sandstone walls remained, weathering but unbroken, blending with the earth as though still alive. Later Navajo and Hopi travelers knew of these places and often regarded them with respect or caution. Some Navajo traditions even considered them inhabited by lingering spirits, and so they were left untouched. Today, exploring Wupatki Pueblo allows you to step directly into this past. Rooms still rise to chest height. Interior plasters bear the faint polish of ancient hands. The ball court lies quiet but evocative. By the blowhole, the earth's cool breath touches your face, the same breath the villagers once felt. At Wukoki, climb the tower and look through its high windows. The desert stretches out like an ocean, and if you're lucky, you may spot pronghorn antelope or a soaring eagle. These redstone strongholds reveal a different side of ancestral Puebloan life, a society that built openly and proudly in the desert rather than hiding among rocks or canyons. Their bold geometry, rectangles, circles, towers, courts, set against endless horizons shows a community determined to thrive in harsh conditions. The vivid contrast of red walls against sage green and yellow grasses wasn't just beautiful, it was symbolic. These were declarations: we belong here, we can thrive here. For a time they did. The legacy of Wupatki and Wukoki is one of adaptation, innovation, and cultural fusion. Born in the shadow of a volcanic eruption, this community transformed adversity into opportunity, creating a flourishing network of trade and ceremony. Visiting today, you feel both the audacity of building a desert domain and the inevitability of its impermanence. Yet the spirit remains. Hopi elders say the site is not empty, that the ancestors are still present. Stand in the plaza as the noon sun burns overhead. Feel the warm wind sweep through the rooms, and you just might sense them too. In the silence of these red ruins, the people who once lived here are never entirely gone. Canyon de Chelly, in the heart of the Navajo Nation, unfolds as a landscape of profound natural majesty. Its red sandstone walls rise more than 600 feet into the sky, enclosing a lush green corridor along the canyon floor. Against one of these towering cliffs, sheltered inside a massive alcove carved by time, sits the evocative White House ruin. This ancestral Puebloan site earns its name from a long upper wall once coated in pale plaster, creating the impression of a white painted dwelling tucked high within the rock. Unlike the sprawling architectural complexes of Mesa Verde, White House is smaller, more intimate, and deeply moving. The dwelling is essentially a two-level cliff village, one portion built at the base of the canyon wall, and another constructed 50 feet above on a natural sandstone ledge. The lower section contains a cluster of masonry rooms on the canyon floor. The upper section consists of rooms built directly into the vast alcove, perched like a swallow's nest within the cliffside. The two areas were separated by sheer rock and historically connected by hand-and-toe trails or wooden ladders long since lost. Viewed from afar, your eyes are instantly drawn to the contrast: angular, human-made structures clinging delicately against the enormous red cliff that dwarfs them entirely. This tension between human scale and geological scale gives White House Ruin its cinematic, almost mythic beauty. It feels as though the earth opened a shelter for people to live in while simultaneously reminding them of its immense power. White House Ruin was constructed and inhabited between the 12th and 13th centuries CE, contemporaneous with many Four Corners cliff dwellings. Its residents were likely part of the broad ancestral Puebloan culture, relatives of the people who built Mesa Verde. They farmed the fertile canyon bottom, cultivating corn, beans, and squash in the rich alluvial soil along Chinle, Washington. The canyon's towering walls offered both physical shelter and a degree of climate moderation, cooler in summer, warmer in winter. The alcove itself is monumental, sculpted by countless years of water seeping through sandstone. The upper dwelling was cleverly positioned on a natural shelf within this cavern, protected from sun and rain by the cliff above. It probably consisted of 4 or 5 rooms built from local sandstone, smoothed with mud plaster, and roofed with timbers and willow. The lower village contained roughly a dozen rooms at ground level, including a small kiva-like chamber for ritual or communal gatherings, though far more modest than the great kivas of Chaco Canyon. The white plaster wall that gave the site its name was likely part of a storage chamber or living space in the upper dwelling. Even today, fragments of the pale coating remain visible, a delicate artistic or functional touch left behind by inhabitants long gone. The White House Trail, the only path in Canyon de Chelly that visitors may hike without a guide, zigzags 560 feet down from the canyon rim to the ruin. As one descends the switchbacks, the canyon reveals its full splendor: immense monoliths, sheer walls streaked with desert varnish, groves of cottonwoods along the wash, and then, emerging across the stream, the ancient dwellings nestled into the cliff. The north wall of the canyon, where the ruin sits, rises almost vertically, a canvas streaked with mineral patina, deep reds, and the sweeping arc of the giant alcove that shelters the site like a natural cathedral dome. The White House is small. It commands attention because it reflects the presence of human life in a landscape otherwise dominated by monumental stone. Photographers often capture the site with Navajo riders on horseback in the foreground, emphasizing its scale. The ruin seems tiny beneath the cliff, yet those small rooms once held entire families and generations. Pottery shards, stone tools, and nearby petroglyphs testify to the daily rituals that took place there: cooking, crafting, raising children, praying for rain. One can imagine a midsummer day around 1200 CE. Puebloan women grinding corn in the shade of the lower rooms while, on the ledge above, a child peers over the wall of the white-plastered chamber, watching for family members returning from the fields. Voices would have echoed easily between upper and lower dwellings, carrying along the curved sandstone like a natural amphitheater. In the evenings, fires would illuminate the alcove, their glow reflecting off the cliff walls as families gathered in the shared courtyard between the two clusters of rooms, sharing food and stories as night settled across the canyon. Canyon de Chelly carries a long continuum of history. After the ancestral Puebloans migrated away around 1300 CE, the ruin, like many others, was abandoned. The canyon later became a homeland for the Navajo, Dine people. In the 1700s and early 1800s, Navajo families farmed and lived on the canyon floor and were fully aware of the cliff dwellings left behind by the Ancient Ones. In Navajo oral tradition, these sites were respected and often linked to the stories of the Anasazi, a word sometimes translated as ancient enemies, though more accurately interpreted as Ancient Ones. The Navajo did not commonly inhabit these old cliff dwellings, but used the alcoves as temporary refuges during times of conflict. Canyon de Chelly became a major stronghold during Colonel Kit Carson's destructive campaign against the Navajo in 1863. It is possible that some Navajo families sought temporary shelter within the empty rooms of the White House site during those desperate days. Many alcoves throughout the canyon served as natural fortresses. This layering of cultures, ancestral Puebloan and Navajo, gives the canyon a deeply resonant spirit. Today, Navajo families continue to live and farm in the canyon. Visitors may see sheep grazing, hear their bleats echo against walls that also hold the silence of ancient masonry. The continuity of life here, spanning from ancestral Puebloan farmers to Navajo families today, is part of what makes this place profoundly sacred. White House Ruin has fascinated outsiders for more than a century. It was first photographed in 1873 by Timothy O'Sullivan, one of America's early landscape photographers, whose striking image brought national attention to the Southwest's archaeological heritage. Since then, countless painters and photographers have returned, capturing the ruin at sunrise when its walls glow gold, or in moonlight when the canyon turns silver blue and still. Standing before it, the inspiration is unmistakable. Many of the walls still stand waist-high to several feet tall. The upper dwelling especially inspires wonder. How did people climb to it? Traces of a hand-and-toe trail remain etched into a crevice, suggesting that a dangerous ascent was part of everyday life. Wooden ladders may also have been used, though none survive. Imagining mothers climbing that cliff with water jars or infants is both humbling and awe-inspiring. Yet the alcove's protection and commanding view over the canyon were likely worth the effort. Unlike cliff dwellings tucked away purely for defense, White House Ruin stands in a grand, open amphitheater, harmonizing with the canyon rather than hiding from it. The enormous arch of sandstone seems to embrace the small village nestled beneath it. Standing near the ruin today, from the designated viewpoint to preserve its fragile remains, it is easy to slip mentally into the 13th century. The scents of sagebrush and juniper on the warm breeze, the gentle flow of Chinle Wash, the songs of canyon wrens ricocheting off the rock. These sensations have changed little since the time of its inhabitants. What has changed is the silence. The people are gone, but their white-plastered house endures, woven into the canyon's memory. White House Ruin symbolizes the union of human ingenuity and natural grandeur, modest yet meaningful. In Canyon de Chelly, the sweeping landscape becomes the frame for the human story, reminding us that while cultures rise and fade, the canyon endures. Framed by towering russet cliffs, White House Ruin stands as a portrait of resilience, creativity, and the quiet persistence of life across centuries. Hovenweep, straddling the remote border between Utah and Colorado, in a stark landscape shaped by sagebrush plains and deeply carved canyons, stands a remarkable gathering of enigmatic stone towers. This place is called Hovenweep, a Paiute, Ute word meaning deserted valley, and within this harsh environment a constellation of ancestral Puebloan settlements thrived nearly 800 years ago. Among these, the Square Tower group is the most striking, an arrangement of ancient stone skyscrapers seemingly clinging to the rims of sheer canyon walls. Walking into Hovenweep, you feel less like a casual hiker and more like an explorer discovering the remnants of a forgotten fortress. Yet these towers are far older than any medieval stronghold. Built in the late 1200s CE, they are contemporaries of the famous cliff dwellings at Mesa Verde, though here the people chose to build upward in the open, as if challenging the vast sky itself. As you approach the Square Tower group in the warm glow of sunset, the first ruins that greet you are Hovenweep Castle and Hovenweep House, poised dramatically on the brink of Little Ruin Canyon. Hovenweep Castle consists of two D-shaped towers joined together, their masonry still standing in places 2 stories high. Just below on the canyon floor, at the mouth of a spring, rises the slender Square Tower, its 3-story height balanced on a house-sized boulder. Today it stands around 20 feet tall, though in its original state it may have reached an impressive 30 to 40 feet. The tower is almost square, with slight rectangular contours and small openings placed with purposeful precision. Across the canyon sits another extraordinary structure known as the Twin Towers. Here, two towers, one with a 16-sided polygonal design and the other more oval, lean together so closely that they nearly interlock. Their unusual shapes reveal the ingenuity of the ancient masons, who adapted each building to the irregular sandstone blocks beneath them. Nearby, structures such as Rimrock House and Stronghold House cling to the canyon rim, while Boulder House incorporates a massive fallen rock directly into its architecture. In total, about a dozen towers and significant buildings rise around the canyon head, and archaeologists have identified nearly 30 kivas on the surrounding slopes and mesas. The density of structures suggests a vibrant community. Perhaps as many as 500 people lived, worked, and worshipped here. The abundance of kivas, many placed directly beside or even beneath towers, hints that these tall buildings served functions far beyond simple storage or defense. Why build towers at all? That is the enduring mystery of Hovenweep. Whereas many Puebloan villages favored rows of one-story room blocks, the people of Hovenweep invested enormous effort into constructing narrow, vertical structures. One theory suggests defensive watchtowers, vantage points to monitor approaching groups during the stressful decades of drought and conflict in the late 1200s. Their commanding views of the mesas and occasional slit-like windows for possible archers lend some weight to this idea. Yet archaeological findings also point towards ceremonial significance. In certain towers, carefully placed windows illuminate specific interior spots at solstice events, turning them into solar observatories or ritual calendars. In at least one case, a narrow opening directs the sunrise beam precisely at a summer solstice marker, an effect reminiscent of the famed sun dagger elsewhere in the southwest. The intimate association of towers with kivas strengthens the hypothesis of ritual use. Some towers are connected to kivas by tunnels, implying that religious specialists or community leaders may have moved between the structures unseen. If the kiva represented the world below and the tower symbolized the upper world, the connection between them could embody the Puebloan cosmological pathway linking realms. Still, evidence of daily life also appears within some towers, grinding stones, pottery sherds, and household debris, suggesting multipurpose functions. Part shelter, part watchtower, part ceremonial chamber. And then there is the symbolic aspect of building vertically. Scholars have suggested that the construction of tall towers reflected a community striving for balance, unity, or spiritual harmony during a turbulent period. The incremental heightening of towers over time might even represent an evolving ritual importance. Walking the trail that loops around the square tower group today, you step into a landscape filled with quiet and an almost haunting stillness. Desert cottontails dart among the sagebrush, and ravens perch atop the ruins, their calls echoing like distant voices. Looking down into the canyon, you notice the life-giving spring, the reason these ancient peoples settled here. The square tower guards this spring, positioned at the canyon's head like a sentinel over water and community. On the opposite rim, Hovenweep Castle allows visitors to enter its lower story. Inside, the cool air and dim light reveal small beam holes where roof timbers once supported an upper floor. Cowhand graffiti from the 1800s scars the wall, but above it remnants of original plaster still cling to the masonry, surviving more than 7 centuries. It is easy to imagine a family living here, children peeking through narrow windows at their cornfields atop the mesa, adults grinding corn or preparing pottery, while watching storm clouds gather above the desert horizon. Continuing along the rim, Twin Towers rises into view again. A doorway between the two structures reveals that the builders envisioned them as a pair. Despite the challenge of constructing one of the rooms with 13 sides, a task even modern architects would approach with caution. These ancient masons were engineers of remarkable ability, balancing art and practicality. Some towers stand atop isolated sandstone blocks detached from the canyon rim, meaning the builders had to construct scaffolding or leap small gaps to access the site. The work required immense planning and boldness. One structure, unit-type house, combines traditional room blocks with a tower, possibly serving as a central communal building. Hovenweep's towers represent one of the final great architectural achievements of the ancestral Puebloans in this region. By the early 1300s, as with their neighbors at Mesa Verde, the inhabitants of Hovenweep began migrating south. They likely joined groups whose descendants include today's Hopi, Zuni, and other Pueblo peoples. Oral traditions from these communities describe leaving places of tall houses and traveling in search of a new center, a striking echo of what Hovenweep reveals archaeologically. When explorer W.D. Huntington documented the ruins in 1854, the structures were already weathered, but still imposing. Their relative isolation spared them from the heavy looting that damaged many other ancient sites in the southwest. That isolation remains part of Hovenweep's power. Even now, the surrounding land is nearly empty, and the night sky is so dark that the Milky Way shines brilliantly above the stone towers. It is easy to imagine ancient observers on the rooftops, charting stars or praying to celestial spirits as the canyon wind moved through the ruins. Daylight or moonlight gives the towers a sense of ageless endurance. Their fine masonry, laid with precision, held together with mud mortar still bearing fingerprints, reveals how carefully and lovingly they were built. We understand much about the methods, somewhat about the purposes, and a great deal about the cultural context. But standing before them, there lingers a quiet, awe-filled mystery that cannot quite be explained. In the broader story of ancient North America, Hovenweep's towers remain unparalleled. These ancient skyscrapers, though small by modern standards, command an immense presence against the sweeping southwest horizon. They provoke deep questions about the people who conceived them, even as their silhouettes seem to declare across centuries, "We were here." We reached upward, and for a time, we made the sky part of our home. Walnut Canyon. Midway through our journey, we descend into Walnut Canyon, a place that offers an intimate window into everyday life carefully carved along the sweeping curve of a looping canyon wall. If the grand pueblos and towering earthen mounds represent the bold, dramatic chapters of ancient America, then Walnut Canyon is the quieter, more personal story, one written by families who lived in snug cliff alcoves and left behind the subtle textures of ordinary existence. Located near Flagstaff, Arizona, Walnut Canyon winds a sinuous path through pine-covered plateaus. Its layered sedimentary cliffs form a series of overhanging ledges resembling stacked natural balconies, the perfect foundation for cliffside homes. Here, during the 11th and 12th centuries CE, the Sinagua people, contemporaries of those who lived at Wupatki and Montezuma Castle, built more than 300 dwellings tucked into limestone recesses. Today, a trail drops about 185 feet into the canyon via more than 700 steps, leading visitors toward a rocky island embraced by a horseshoe-shaped meander of the canyon. This is the famous Island Trail, where you pass 25 stabilized cliff rooms while dozens more stare back from across the narrow gorge. As you step onto the Island Trail, ponderosa pines and junipers suddenly give way to exposed cliffs carved with shallow caves. Then the dwellings appear, small, tidy masonry rooms arranged beneath those rock shelves, often lined up like a string of stone beads tracing the curvature of the canyon. These were the homes of Sinagua families, usually one-room or two-room units built inside natural alcoves. The geology here did half the work. The Kaibab limestone eroded into horizontal recesses about 10 to 15 feet deep, ready-made for habitation. The residents cleared debris, stacked masonry front and side walls with mud mortar, and formed simple but functional cliff houses sheltered by stone above. Each dwelling had a low front doorway, probably closed with a woven mat or stone slab, and sometimes a small ventilation hole for light and airflow. The alcove ceiling itself served as the roof, a blessing in a region where timber was scarce, and gave the homes a curved, natural interior. These rooms were small, many no larger than 200 square feet. Walking the trail, you often ducked to step inside. The walls remain surprisingly sturdy, rocks carefully fitted to the alcove's shape. The ceilings are blackened with soot left by centuries of household fires and the scent of dust, and occasionally bat guano, lingers faintly. The Hopi name for the canyon, Sayasopa, place of the bats, is fitting. Inside one dwelling, a metate grinding slab is displayed, worn smooth by generations preparing corn. In another, faint floor depressions hint where wooden posts once stood, perhaps supporting cradle boards, shelves, or storage frames. When occupied, these rooms likely held a hearth near the door to vent smoke outward and a small raised sleeping platform toward the back. The Sinagua plastered their walls, so imagine smooth pale interiors glowing orange in firelight on a cold winter evening as winds howled through the canyon. Despite the canyon's beauty, its climate could be unforgiving. Summers were mild, but winters at 7,000 feet brought biting cold and frequent snow. Yet these cliff homes provided natural climate control. Facing mostly south or east, they captured winter sunlight, while the stone above insulated the families from harsh weather. In many ways, these were energy-efficient dwellings perfectly matched to the land. But the canyon's greatest asset was Walnut Creek below, a perennial stream in ancient times that supplied drinking water and irrigation. The Sinagua farmed the canyon bottom, planting corn and squash where moisture lingered longest. On the rim above, they cultivated hardy maize and amaranth in dry fields. The canyon's biodiversity, with more than 400 plant species, reveals the richness of their diet. Walnuts, hackberries, piñon nuts, berries, edible greens, and cactus fruit. Game such as deer, rabbits, and turkey supplemented their meals. What seems rugged to modern eyes was a remarkably abundant homeland. Life here was likely calm and decentralized compared with major hubs like Cahokia or Chaco Canyon. Walnut Canyon's inhabitants formed a small community, perhaps a few extended families spread across the alcoves and nearby rim pueblos. Early settlements on the rim date between 700 and 900 CE, but by the 11th century, as populations shifted or defensive concerns grew, many families moved into the cliffs. Remains of a rim pueblo still stand today, suggesting communal gatherings or additional housing took place there. Archaeologists estimate the canyon may have held over 150 rooms in total, more than even the famous Cliff Palace at Mesa Verde, though here they were dispersed, creating independence without isolation. Imagine a morning around 1200 CE. As sunlight crawls down the canyon walls, a woman leaves her alcove home, climbs to a lower ledge, then descends to the creek using a series of carved footholds. She fills a pottery jar with fresh water and ascends the same narrow path with practiced ease. Children dart along the ledges gathering wild onions or checking turkey traps. Men head toward the mesa to tend fields or hunt in the pines beyond the rim. Smoke from breakfast fires drifts from dozens of cliff homes, merging into a soft haze that hugs the canyon. The place held serenity, but also risk. A misplaced step could mean disaster. The Sinagua must have had exceptional balance. They lived close enough to shout across the canyon, but far enough apart for privacy. Their lifestyle blended independence with community, solitude with shared gatherings at the creek or rim pueblo. By evening, the canyon falls into shadow while the rim still glows in the last rays of sun. Then the sky deepens into darkness, revealing a narrow ribbon of stars framed by the canyon walls. It's easy to imagine how protected the place must have felt, like a cradle hidden from the wider world. Perhaps this seclusion was part of why the Sinagua settled here, a refuge tucked into stone. Archaeologists believe Walnut Canyon was abandoned around 1250 CE, likely due to drought or a shift toward larger pueblos like Wupatki. The departure appears peaceful. Little evidence suggests conflict or disaster. Many descendants likely joined Hopi or Zuni cultural groups, carrying their traditions with them. Hopi oral histories recount clans, like the Badger clan, migrating from regions that may include Walnut Canyon. For centuries afterward, the cliff homes stood empty except for occasional visits by native hunters or early travelers. Unfortunately, easy access from the railroad in the late 1800s brought looters who plundered many sites, prompting Walnut Canyon's designation as a national monument in 1915. Today, visitors trace the same narrow ledges once walked by ancient families, gaining a rare connection to domestic life from centuries past. Unlike towering monuments or grand ceremonial centers, Walnut Canyon offers a deeply human perspective. Here you find soot-stained ceilings, the smooth surface of a grinding stone, perhaps even the faint imprint of a child's hand pressed into old plaster. These intimate details bridge centuries, reminding us that the story of ancient America is not only about monumental architecture, but also about ordinary families adapting with creativity and resilience. Each small cliff house clinging to the canyon wall carries the memory of a family who shaped comfort out of stone and made a sustainable life in a challenging land. As you climb the long steps back to the rim in the soft light of late afternoon, you might almost hear an echo, a Sinagua lullaby drifting upward from the canyon floor, carried across 7 centuries, still lingering in the quiet air of Walnut Canyon. Poverty Point. Picture yourself soaring in a small aircraft above the lush, emerald delta of northeastern Louisiana. As the landscape drifts beneath you, you begin to notice strange, graceful curves etched into the earth, vast, concentric arcs that are almost invisible from the ground but unmistakable from the sky. These sweeping C-shaped ridges form Poverty Point, one of the most extraordinary and ancient architectural achievements in all of North America. Constructed between roughly 1700 and 1100 BCE during the late Archaic period, Poverty Point is so ancient that it predates the rise of Rome by nearly 2,000 years. While the great pharaohs of Egypt's New Kingdom were erecting their monumental temples, the indigenous peoples of this region were moving tons of soil to craft an earthwork complex of astonishing scale. Poverty Point is often described, half in awe, half in disbelief, as older than the pyramids, at least older than the great Mesoamerican pyramids, and roughly contemporary with some of Egypt's earlier monumental works. Whatever comparison one prefers, its age remains staggering. Nearly 3,700 years ago, an organized, thriving society flourished along these bayou ridges, shaping a set of earthworks so vast that nothing else in North America would match it for more than 2,000 years. The most iconic elements of the site are its 6 massive earthwork ridges arranged in a sweeping semicircle that opens toward the west. These ridges rise and fall like the seats of a gargantuan natural amphitheater. Though centuries of erosion have softened them to only a few feet in height today, they originally stood 4 to 6 feet tall and stretched more than 150 feet in width. Each one arcs nearly 3/4 of a mile from end to end, with the outermost ring spanning roughly 1.2 kilometers. When seen as a whole, the design resembles gentle nested ripples, enormous C-shapes nested inside one another across 340 acres of land. For pathways cut straight through these rings, dividing them into segments and providing access to the enormous central plaza. At the heart of this complex lies a plaza of breathtaking proportions, a 37-acre open field equivalent in size to more than 30 football stadiums. The scale of the entire arrangement is so immense that for centuries no one recognized its deliberate geometry while standing at ground level. Only in the 20th century, when archaeologists examined aerial photographs, did the full design emerge. In many ways, Poverty Point's builders were among the first on the continent to reshape the land itself on a monumental scale, creating a design only fully visible from a high vantage point or from the sky. This realization sends a shiver down one's spine. Such engineering and planning occurred thousands of years before the classical world, and without the aid of metal tools, domesticated draft animals, or a rigidly stratified society. Yet the accomplishment stands as one of the greatest indigenous engineering feats ever achieved. Beyond the ridges, Poverty Point includes several monumental mounds, one of which ranks among the largest built in North America during its era. Known as Mound A, or the Bird Mound, this massive construction rises just west of the ridge complex. Mound A stands approximately 72 feet high and measures about 705 by 660 feet at its base. Its total footprint nearly matches that of the Great Pyramid of Giza, although it is far shorter. Its cross-shaped, wing-like outline has been interpreted by many as representing a stylized bird effigy when viewed from above. Containing roughly 8.4 million cubic feet of soil, Mound A is surpassed in sheer volume only by Monk's Mound at Cahokia, which was built more than 2 millennia later. Remarkably, recent studies suggest Mound A may have been constructed at incredible speed, possibly within months or just a few years. Before construction began, the builders burned the vegetation that covered the site, leaving behind a charcoal layer dated to between 1400 and 1250 BCE. From there, basket after basket of earth, loamy soil, clay, and sediment, was carried and packed into the shape of a towering ceremonial platform. Its purpose remains partly mysterious. It may have been a ceremonial hub, the base of a temple, a stage for rituals, or even an elevated refuge during floods. Whatever role it played, anyone who climbed to its summit thousands of years ago would have commanded a panoramic view of the surrounding ridges, bayous, and the distant Mississippi waterways. Other mounds at Poverty Point include Mound B, a smaller 21-foot conical mound likely dating to around 1700 BCE, and Mound E, a later flat-topped construction, along with several lesser features. Together, the ridges and mounds form an intricate ceremonial landscape, so unique and sophisticated that UNESCO designates it as a monumental earthwork complex. But Poverty Point was not merely a ceremonial marvel. It was also a thriving community, and perhaps even a pilgrimage center. Excavations reveal evidence of homes, post holes, hearths, and middens on the ridges, indicating that people actually lived atop these engineered platforms. Imagine circular huts built from poles and thatch, positioned along the ridge arcs. Picture families roasting fish from the rivers, cracking nuts collected from the forests, or preparing meals around communal fires. The central plaza may have been used for ceremonies, markets, gatherings, or large festivals. Some archaeologists speculate that different regions of the ridges hosted groups from different parts of the southeastern United States, suggesting a vast ceremonial gathering place that far exceeded the needs of a typical village. Perhaps the most revealing part of Poverty Point's story lies in its artifacts, which illuminate an expansive trade network and a thriving semi-sedentary hunter-gatherer society. More than 100,000 baked clay Poverty Point objects have been found, small, shaped pieces of clay used as heating stones for cooking. Their many forms, spheres, cylinders, bicones, may have controlled cooking temperature or timing. Stone tools discovered at the site tell an even broader story. Much of the stone used here was not local. Flint came from the Ohio Valley, Novaculite from Arkansas, soapstone bowls from the Appalachian foothills, and tiny amounts of copper from the Great Lakes. Archaeologists have even found imported galena and exotic minerals. Since good stone is scarce in Louisiana, the people of Poverty Point likely traded their own specialties: finely made shell beads, polished stone items, pottery, and probably dried foods. The site's location along waterways connected to the Mississippi River made it a natural crossroads for trade. In many ways, Poverty Point acted as a major center of exchange and ritual, perhaps one of the earliest cities in North America. If not by population, then by influence and complexity. Although the builders left no written records and human burials are unusually scarce, the construction of such enormous earthworks required communal effort, planning, and leadership. Whether inspired by religion, cosmology, or social tradition, the concentric pattern may have symbolized the structure of the cosmos or the order of their society. Although proposed astronomical alignments exist, none is yet confirmed. Around 1100 BCE, however, use of the site diminished. Environmental changes, shifting cultural patterns, or other social pressures may have caused people to disperse. For centuries afterward, indigenous cultures of the region remembered the achievements of the ancient ones of Poverty Point. And although similar earthworks were built later across the southeast, none replicated the vast and elegant semicircle design of this place. Poverty Point remains truly one of a kind. Walking through Poverty Point today, you may first notice only low, grassy rises. But as you explore, You realize you're crossing colossal rings sculpted by thousands of human hands. It feels like navigating the ghostly outline of a monument whose full form is hidden just beneath the surface. From the modern 50-foot observation mound, the sweeping arcs become visible. From atop Mound A, accessible by trail, the view widens even more. The ridges unfold below like green waves, while old river channels glimmer at the edge of the horizon. In that moment, it becomes easy to imagine the site alive with people, alive with purpose. You might picture smoke rising from cooking fires, music or drumming echoing across the plaza, and hundreds gathered for ceremonies that once bound communities from across the region together. And then you remember, this happened more than 3,000 years ago, long before Cahokia, before the ancestral Puebloans built Chaco Canyon, before Greek philosophers or Roman senators walked the earth. Poverty Point stands as a masterpiece of ancient America, a reminder that complex, innovative societies flourished in North America far earlier than many imagine. In the story of indigenous achievements, Poverty Point belongs at the opening chapters, a vast, awe-inspiring, still enigmatic monument whose full grandeur becomes clear only when seen from above.